We are living through one of the biggest changes in history. Technology and work are changing, and so are we. Every day, new technology reshapes our lives, often faster than we can understand it. Grasp what's happening, what it means for you, and how stay ahead. Welcome to The Future Was Yesterday, a podcast where we talk with the leaders who are reshaping the world of work. Because the future isn't coming, it's already here.
Welcome, Julia, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
First of all, I'd like to start by asking if you could tell us a little bit about the work that you are doing at the moment.
Of course. So right now I am the co-founder of Truesix, which is an international visibility agency. We work with innovators from around the world to gain visibility outside of their home markets. And we do that through a variety of ways, through classical communications tactics like PR, but also any kind of earned visibility through long-form written content, which is mostly our approach, the skill set that we make use of. So we help companies get noticed online by whatever measures it takes. And on top of that, we also work with events to manage their own international visibility, such as, for example, Tech Chill, where we manage the media relations, which is where we were able to meet Cesar and drive more visibility for those ecosystems that those events are representing. So we work with a range of innovators, starting from small early stage companies to corporations to governmental organizations to intergovernmental organizations, for example, the European Commission, to help drive their visibility efforts for initiatives that they believe are important, which we also believe are important.
By the way, thank you so much for all your attentions in Tech Chill. It was an amazing experience, and I really enjoyed it very much. And I think everyone was amazed by how incredible event Tech Chill is. Actually, how big and interesting, and all the personalities that are coming to give talks and lectures. It's I know from friends living in the other Nordic countries, when I'm telling them about the experience in Tech Chill, a little bit unexpected, because at the end, Latvia is maybe not the country best known in the world by being a technological leader. So I just want to say thank you so much for being part of something like this and put something that important in front of us every year.
Indeed, and thank you for coming. And truly, I think that Tech Chill is definitely a gem of the Baltics. And what people really come back to it for is the vibes. It is the perfect size where you're able to meet new people and be friendly, and those serendipitous meetings and create those contacts, but at the same time to be big enough to be able to expand your horizons. So we feel like it's really right in the sweet spot.
Yeah, indeed. And talking about the tech sector in Latvia, and talking also about Latvia, I would like to ask if you could tell, especially for the people who don't know much about Latvia, if you can tell us a little bit about the tech sector in Latvia, the startup ecosystem, from where it's coming, how strong do you think it is? Anything that you think will be interesting to share?
For sure. So I think that Latvia itself has a very long history of innovation that spans hundreds of years, particularly in the scientific and engineering space. And this is particularly emphasized by some of the construction work that was done in the beginning of the 90s. Planes were being built in Latvia when planes are just becoming to start being a thing. We've had scientists that did the math for space exploration who passed away before space exploration was ever implemented, and they never were able to see their math implemented into airspace exploration. The smallest camera that was used by spies during the Second World War was devised by Latvians. So much physics, engineering, that was developed. And we've seen this culture, this historical culture, seep into the innovations that we're seeing in modern days. And this has a lot to do with some of the major technology companies that developed in the 90s. So after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Baltic countries regained their independence, and a lot of the factories that were state held during communism had to go into private hands. And so some of those were L&T, which is Latvia's largest telecommunications operator. But not only, they do a lot of innovations in the field of communications, of telecommunications and connectivity, and are doing a lot in terms of smart cities, in defense tech, IoT, and that sort of thing. This is a direct kind of, they absorbed a lot of the people who were working in the state electronics factory, which was that company that was established in the 90s, building these planes, these radios, these cameras, etc. So a lot of that connectivity and electricity know-how. Similarly, with Softechnica, who are also, they're more radio connectivity, as well as Mikrotik, which is now a world famous router company. So like a lot of this innovation and the engineering, like we see that it comes through from that, but also just a lot of scientific history, which lends itself well to the deep tech innovations that we're seeing now. Latvia, for example, has one of the highest rates of female scientists in Europe. Yeah, and so we see a lot of deep tech space or science-driven innovations right now in Latvia, and I do believe that that is a history. It's not accidental. So, of course, then there's a lot of cultural aspects that impact that. There are, for example, Latvians are very culturally involved. Singing is a big part of the culture. So, as a result, we see a lot of audio technology innovations. For example, the microphone I'm using right now, the Blue Yeti, it has, you can trace them back to Latvian roots. And so there are a lot of these aspects that merge, that come together. So that's kind of pre-startup era bubble, and then you get into the 2008, 2009, 2010s when people are starting to come together and form the ecosystem, and people are starting to build their startups. The concept, the word for startup, has entered our awareness. People now are aware of the concept of scaling, of VC investment. The concept of unicorns arises. And so you see the establishment of Tekabriga, which was the hub that brought together these innovators who were interested in building technologies to scale them and have a global impact. So that went hand in hand with the establishment of TechChill, and I was very lucky to be one of the first volunteers on TechChill, and even was able to name the conference itself when there was an unexpected mandatory name change needed at the last minute. So that was all a driver to introduce this new startup mindset in the industry, in the ecosystem. And so it's been building ever since. And we've seen some big successes. We've seen some awesome exits and repeat founders. That being said, we haven't seen the massive growth that we've seen in neighboring countries like Estonia, for example, which had the Skype effect of founders who participated in a massive exit, who were then able to reinvest their funds into the ecosystem and build more startups, build more founders, and then keep that snowball rolling. So we haven't seen that. What we have seen, however, is a preference towards profitability. So perhaps maybe more risk averse and more willing to prioritize stable growth, profitability, product market fit. And the startup community doesn't tend to reward those kinds of metrics, even though I would argue that it's even harder to sometimes to drive profit, to find your product market fit, to create something that people are willing to pay for, with the alternative being really convincing investors to give you more and more loans, which of course has merit and is done because you're proving that you're reaching different milestones and whatnot. But both are very valuable and difficult things to achieve. So perhaps this concept of scaling, of unicornness, we have one unicorn, it's Printful, which I was also on the founding team of. And maybe it's not suited right now to the Latvian mentality. We definitely went that direction. But right now we're entering an entirely new world. And now we're seeing the rise of AI, We've got a new program in Riga called Start School Riga, which is building every year a generation of 100 very capable founders who are very well versed in the opportunities that AI brings. I was talking to one founder who had spent 2 years building his startup, and he said, yeah, we have a new competitor, and he built it in 1 week. That took him 2 years. So I think we're seeing a new generation of entrepreneurs who are aware of the opportunities and are willing to use those opportunities and seize them and to build. Latvians have never been lazy. And they've always been very, very hardworking and very keen to make things and try things out. I would say that if there's any shortcoming, then it would be in the confidence to tell the world about it. And that's my mission in what I do, is to step in with that confidence and tell them, no, this is actually really cool, and we should be amplifying this to as many people as we should.
Well, this is an amazing story, and you kind of answer several of the questions that I had about the situation with the tech sector in Latvia, from where it's coming, and the work that you are doing. And being you, like you just said, coming from the land of unicorns, what is something that you think that need to happen to start maybe changing the mentality in Latvia about, maybe not specifically about the tech sector, but to start believing in themselves, or being more loud about that? It's something that should change in education, in culture. What do you think that it's missing?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that a lot of it comes down to having the ambition in scaling a global company, as well as having the confidence that you can do it and not taking no for an answer. And I think that there are some aspects that can drive ambition and that confidence. And that first, most important one, I think, is having role models of people who have already done it. We can see it very clearly in Latvia with the Printify, Printful situation. Printful was established and it was doing well. Competitor or other entrepreneurs saw how well it was doing and started up things that were very similar. And as such, Latvia has an unexpected e-commerce, on-demand dropshipping industry, where we saw then Printify being created and then seeing the merge into Fuel. And we also have lots of different companies such as Suppleful and other on-demand e-commerce dropshipping industry startups coming out of it, because we had that one example of one company that was doing it well, that was experiencing global success, and that acted as a signal to other entrepreneurs that if I can do it, you can do it too. So if anything, we need more of these success cases, and there are many success cases. We need people to talk about them. One of my biggest pet peeves is that I've observed a trend of Latvian modesty when it comes to fundraising, where startup founders raise funding for their startups, but do not disclose it. They don't tell the world that they have. When I talk to them about why they chose that route, and of course it's up to them if they want to disclose it or not, but they have a variety of arguments saying, well, it's not important for my company growth. I need that funding to continue scaling. It's not, I don't need that public relations aspect right now because we're just working on the product. Others say, I don't want the additional scrutiny on me as a founder. But I would argue that it's a very patriotic thing to disclose your funding, because first of all, if once you disclose your funding, then it can be added to the publicly known amount of funding that has been raised within the country. So if we have all of a sudden, if it turns out 50% of our fundraising rounds have been undisclosed, then imagine how much higher we would be in any of the rankings. Like, I think that in reality, we actually have a lot more funding than we're seeing in any of the graphs available online. And second, it's a signal to other young entrepreneurs that this has traction, and going this route can bring returns. So I think that it has a lot of benefit of disclosing that. So that's one thing about driving ambition. I think that there is also a few things that we can do as a society to support that. One thing is to celebrate entrepreneurship. If you go to any of the local newspapers or news outlets, very rarely will any of them be focused on successful businesses. There's a big focus on politics, on what's going wrong, a lot on culture, but not very much on business. Having spoken to some of the media representatives, they believe that if they write about businesses, they're offering free marketing. They don't want to be perceived as giving them free marketing. I would argue that it is necessary in a community to also communicate about the entrepreneurship endeavors so that we can build a society where we have more business, where we have more income, where we have more export, because it will ultimately benefit our society when we have more taxpayers, when we have more external income and more workplaces. I would highly recommend, if any people from the media space are listening, then to write more about businesses, or if you're a citizen or an inhabitant, maybe to heighten demand for it. Write to your editors, write to your journalists and say, hey, I really wish you would do more features and coverage of business and tech and innovation. So there's that. And then, of course, there are also, you can always point towards policies and support mechanisms. That being said, Latvia is very advanced in policies that support startups. In fact, Latvia is consistently rated among the top in terms of national startup support friendliness policies. We have It's so easy to create a company. There are very low barriers to entry. There are many programs where you can have support in covering like a large chunk of services that you might need, like building a business plan, or for example, hiring external communications support, building out a technology. Like there's a voucher program that gives a lot of support for that, drastically reducing the amount that you would have to pay for something like that.
In regarding to that, sorry to interrupt, but if I will have a caveat about this part is precisely that there is so many ways of getting support that it's confusing. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but because people is doing it, but it's confusing if you don't work together with these authorities or these organizations,
of course,
and you try to do it.
And the paperwork can be
from your side, yeah.
I also see that. So another thing that I think society can do, and now I'm speaking to people who work in public policy spaces, is that every person who works in public policy space, you become the ambassador of driving economic growth. If every little person, every ministry and every investment agency, if they're doing their job to the absolute maximum, then we're able to collectively improve what we're doing. Like if you do your support role to the best of your ability and go above and beyond, you're going to be making an entrepreneur's ability to find financing so much easier. If you are working on a website project, if you go the extra mile to make sure that the user interface is understandable, if you make sure that it's available not only in Latvian but also in English and whatever other languages might be in demand, to make sure that information is up to date, all of these little things are necessary. They're the small little details, but that's what differentiates good from great. And I would invite every person who works in the public sector to understand that how absolutely important they are to our economic success, and our future is in their hands in many ways. So if there's another thing that I could do, then I would say encourage people in the public sector to understand how critical they are in the value chain, and become part of our excellence journey.
Yeah, I think one of the important things from my perspective, my experience, is precisely to maybe raise awareness that there is this ecosystem and that people can become part of this ecosystem. If you have if you have kids, you can try to make them interested in entrepreneurship, trying to foster this kind of mentality. Doesn't mean that they have to open their own business. Just try to develop this entrepreneurial mindset and don't allow that they grow expecting that things happen to them. I think this is something maybe is cultural, or from my point of view, this idea that entrepreneurship is this ability to be the driver or the driving force in your own life. No, it's kind of a mentality or a mindset, maybe.
Yeah, and you don't have to be the number one CEO to be participating in this success story either. Every little cog is needed in this machine.
Yeah. And because we are reaching the end of our time and of this conversation, and I would like to ask you before finishing, if in your career, in your time, that all the experience that you have had, if there is some project that you have seen that maybe now, maybe a few years ago, but that you see it and you think, or you thought, this it's our game changer. This is something that I would like to see build, or I would like to have been seen build, and it's going to change things for us. Do you have something like that?
Yeah, I think that a huge game changer for the startup community was the establishment of Startup House Riga. Before that, Tech Hub Riga, which was the main hub for people to come together, it was a co-working space, an event space, but it didn't have its permanent home. It was jumping around different places. During COVID, it lost its home entirely, and only thanks to entrepreneurs and the community were they able to come together and create Startup House Riga, which started as one building in the Spiket area, and it was full of entrepreneurs, of startups, of early stage startups, of investors, of investment agency people, a place for the community to kind of rub shoulders with each other, to be involved in what they're doing, to inspire each other, to get quick answers to big questions, to share experience, and to have those collective events in one place. And we've seen that this has been so successful that they've opened a second house also in the Spiket area. And I also heard that they're already looking at a third venue. And what we're seeing is what I heard the CEO of the Startup House saying was that if you look at last year's total funding attracted, if you subtract the something like 62 million that Aeron's raised, all the other rounds were divided among startups that all lived at Startup House. So you can see a very direct implication, having that community support and being able to raise funding. So I think that this is definitely a game changer. It's also the home of Start School, Riga Tech Girls, which are also both programs that I think are just going to drive exponential growth for us.
Absolutely. The final question for you is, because a great part of our listeners, they are in their this maybe, and maybe they are fearing about the AI adoption, that this idea is going to take the jobs and everything. Is some practical advice you would like to give to these people that maybe they are afraid, but are also curious, and maybe they would like to try a second act in their lives? Something that you will share for them?
Yeah, well, I would say that lean into that curiosity. I think that curiosity can take you a far way, especially right now when we have all these AI tools that have essentially leveled the playing field. If previously there was a startup that took 2 years to create, then now vibe coders have been able to build it in 1 week. So you're also able to do that. You don't have to go in with the goal of making millions immediately. Just go in, try something out, see if you can solve a problem in your daily life, get curious, and feed that curiosity, see where it takes you.
Thank you so much, Julia, for your time, for your thoughts, for your expertise. And I hope it won't be the last time that we have a conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me. Let's talk.
Thank you. And thanks to our couple of listeners. Remember, we learn from each other. I wish you agency and a wonderful day. And remember that the future was yesterday. Thank you so much.
Hi, this episode is brought to you by Sala. Building for the future shouldn't feel overwhelming. Sala is an all-in-one solution designed to support you at every stage. From shaping an idea to AI-powered customer service. But Sala don't just focus on technology. They help you make sense of it and actually use it in a way that works for you. If you're looking to grow, adapt, or future-proof your business, check out Sala.